Samantha Lee Josephson was brought into the world to her folks Seymour and Marcy Josephson in Princeton, New Jersey, and experienced childhood in Robbinsville, New Jersey. As a youngster, she went to the College of South Carolina where she studied political theory. Samantha, who was a senior in school at the hour of her end, anticipated graduating in 2019 and going to Drexel College School of Regulation, where she needed to review to turn into a legal counselor work in global regulation. Samantha procured a full grant to Drexel College as well as a fractional grant to Reuter and tried to rehearse global regulation. Samantha was an individual from the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, concentrated on abroad in Barcelona, and visited Madrid and Paris during her time in South Carolina. Samantha was incredibly gorgeous and had a great grin. Samantha had a sweetheart named Greg, and the couple was extremely near one another. They stayed in contact with one another consistently, continually messaging and calling each other when it was potential. They had plans to begin a future together in any event, when Samantha would have been joining in graduate school. Greg planned to move in with her, and backing her beginning and end appeared to be working out positively till Friday, 29, 2019, when she always avoided her condo and things got ugly for Samantha. On the night of spring 28, 2019, Samantha wanted to go out with her flatmate and a few companions in Columbia, South Carolina. Her sweetheart Greg should go along with them likewise, yet he was back in his old neighborhood at the time. Still, he advised her to go out and have some good times without him. Samantha was feeling bleak subsequent to becoming aware of a relative's illness. What she simply required was to divert herself a cycle, and going out for certain companions was the ideal chance to raise her spirits. The gathering got together and went to a couple bars before at long last settling at a bar known as the Bird Canine Bar, which was situated in a space known as 5 Focuses, a problem area for understudies to hang out at bars. Despite the fact that Samantha was having a great time break with her companions, she persistently messaged her beau Greg, importuning him to make a 2-hour drive to visit her in Columbia since she wanted everyday encouragement. The couple had proactively made arrangements to see each other the next end of the week, so her sweetheart never altered his perspective and chose to remain where he was at. Yet at the same time, he kept in steady correspondence with her. At around 2 a.m. Samantha chose to make a beeline for her loft without help from anyone else, and she called a Uber, a well-known ride-share administration, utilizing an application on her telephone, as that was a typical practice among her and her companions on that event. Destiny would convey her under the control of a killer. While Samantha was pausing for the Uber, she had one final visit on the telephone with Greg at around 2:04 a.m. Samantha let him know she was going home and took a Uber on the way. That was the routine Samantha had done often previously, utilizing a Uber to get to and from the bars since it was excessively far for a walk. A couple of moments subsequent to setting the solicitation with a Uber, a vehicle pulled up to the check where Samantha and a gathering of other fatigued bar clients were sitting tight for lifts. Surveillance cameras caught her coming the vehicle just to understand that the driver was there for another person. Subsequent to doing an about-face, she is seen withdrawing to her spot on the walkway. Samantha was wearing an orange shirt and dark jeans. After some time, a dark Chevrolet Impala, a later distinguished driven by a man as Nathaniel David Rowland, pulled up into the space before her. Samantha expressed farewell to Greg, and expecting that was her lift, she opened the entryway and traded a fast word with the individual in the driver's seat prior to moving into the secondary lounge. Once she was inside, the vehicle hurried off away. Inside a question of minutes, the Uber that Samantha requested showed up at the assigned pickup area. Subsequent to looking to no end for their client, the driver dropped the solicitation and left, starting there in time no one other than the 21-year-old political theory significant understudy, and the man driving the Impala realized that she had gotten into some unacceptable vehicle. The CCTV film would later show that the dark Chevrolet Impala circumnavigated the region various times prior to focusing on Samantha. Anyone who has at any point invested energy in 5 Focuses knew that school kids assembled in the roads after the bars shut to hang tight for their rides, and watching him cruise all over the area brought about the end that he knew precisely exact thing he was doing that late evening. Astounding sweetheart Greg he followed Samantha by means of the Find My Companions application on her telephone to ensure that she returned home safe that evening. While he watched Samantha's development on the guide through the application, he understood that she was going the other way of where her loft was found. despite the fact that at first didn't respect it as it very well may be. She was going to a companion's home. Greg later messaged her to verify whether she was okay. Tragically, he never got any input. He then had a go at calling her, however she never addressed her telephone. Greg never surrendered and had a go at messaging her few additional times until he saw that messages he sent her appeared as conveyed yet not read, meaning Samantha never read any of Greg's instant messages. Her telephone area later on quit sharing, which made Greg stunned as it had never occurred before. Greg later believed that Samantha lost her telephone in the Uber, yet he chose to call her companions and her flatmate to see whether they heard from her. Or on the other hand, in the event that she had come to her home, tragically no one heard from her or saw her. Greg trusted she would turn up in the first part of the day, thus attempted to get some rest the next day. In the first part of the day, Samantha was mysteriously gone. Her flatmates were worried about her whereabouts and revealed her missing her sweetheart. Greg likewise made a 2-hour drive down to Columbia to help with looking for her. Somewhat more than 3 to 4 hours after the report for someone who has gone missing was recorded, the dead body of a young lady who was subsequently affirmed to be Samantha Josephson was found by a gathering of turkey trackers in a forest region in New Zion, around 65 miles away from 5 places, in under 24 hours after she was most recently seen on the observation video getting in a dark vehicle. Stunned by the horrifying revelation, the trackers straightaway called 911 and delegates from the nearby sheriff's office were immediately dispatched to the scene. After a post-mortem was performed, it was exceptionally certain that whatever happened to Samantha was a totally vicious assault. Her body had in excess of 120 separate cut injuries, with wounds to her face, head, neck, hands, chest area, legs and feet. It was additionally resolved that her fingernails were hacked to pieces as she attempted to protect a dangerously sharp likey device from connecting with her tissue. It appeared to be that she was cut with a 2-fold bladed blade and afterward hauled to the forest. The dissection likewise uncovered the degree of Samantha's blood misfortune contrasted with the human body, which typically has no less than 4 L of blood to her body, which just held back 20 ml of blood. Specialists had the option to rapidly pull that observation video film from the bar that evening before, which uncovered that Samantha got into the dark Chevrolet Impala vehicle. Examiners saw that the vehicle was orbiting the block a few times, which appeared to be that whoever was in it was watching and hanging tight for a potential casualty. The examiners figured out that Samantha coincidentally got into her executioner vehicle thinking it was her Uber. The Uber that Samantha called was seen showing up a brief time frame later anyway. When the driver found she was not there, he dropped the excursion and left. All things considered, the vehicle she was in was not the Uber, on the grounds that she was killed just a brief time frame later. So specialists accepted that the driver presumably utilized child-proof locks to trap her inside, since when the child-proof lock is on, the entryways must be opened from an external perspective of a vehicle, so by then Samantha wouldn't not have had the option to get out. The depictions of the vehicle were immediately uncovered to people in general, with expectations of finding the culprit before he struck once more, and luckily it didn't require long. After the day when Samantha's body was found, the dark Chevrolet Impala was spotted by officials on routine watch at 3 a.m. on Spring 30th, cruising exactly the same region Samantha was seized in. When the officials pulled the vehicle over, the driver leaped out of the vehicle and took off, pursuing a short pursuit. He was gotten a couple of roads over and captured. When the police checked his ID, they found that the man they had in guardianship was a 24-year-old occupant of New Zion named Nathaniel Rowland. When the watch officials investigated the vehicle, they found a youngster's vehicle seat in the back encompassed by what appeared to be blood smudges, which immediately settled on them. Decision for reinforcement. In the wake of seeing that they were taking a gander at an assumed crime location when murder investigators took over, they brushed the vehicle start to finish and found lavish measures of blood on the front seat and in the storage compartment, as well as a horrendous impression on one of the back windows. Samantha's PDA was additionally found actually lying on the wood planks, which the investigators would later discover that he had endeavored to offer to a pawn shop prior that day, yet he could have done without 125 for the telephone offer they gave him, consequently driving him to leave it in the vehicle. The analysts likewise found the kid locks enacted, affirming the doubt that that was precisely the way in which Rowland caught Samantha in his vehicle. Analysts likewise found an assortment of cleaning items in the vehicle, including Blanche window more clean Furthermore, antibacterial wipes. However, fortunately he didn't do that extraordinary of a cleaning position, since there was still a ton of blood in his vehicle. During his cross-examination, Roland consistently denied having any information on the seizing and murder of Samantha Josephson. Even with heaping proof running against the norm, he kept up with that he was guiltless of the violations of which he was being charged. When an actual assessment was performed on Roland following his capture, it revealed hints of Samantha's DNA under his fingernails in a dazing development. In spite of that, her hereditary markers were available in him. None of his DNA was found on her, while that was unquestionably uncommon when criminal investigators sorted out the unnerving subtleties of her last minutes on Earth. These discoveries seemed okay from what they could gather. Criminal investigators guessed that Samantha was a survivor of a rush assault. The way that the child-proof secures in the vehicle were as yet connected with it at the hour of Roland's capture drove them to presume that he enacted that element when his casualty got in the vehicle, making it unimaginable for her to open the entryways with next to no method for safeguarding herself. Samantha was left defenseless, as the man she naturally suspected was her Uber driver cut her over and over with a two-fold bladed blade. Surprised by the brutal assault, she needed to invest some part of energy into attempting to keep off the blows, which would represent the various cut injuries found on her hands as well as the state of her ravaged fingernails. Considering how much extreme power that was forced on her, it's justifiable that Samantha couldn't scratch her assailant, which would have left his skin cells under her nails. After the terrifying demonstration was done, Roland headed to a rancher's frontage road in New Zion, where just a neighborhood would have realized it existed, and unloaded Samantha's body in the close-by woods. Subsequent to showing up back home, Roland went through a significant part of the day posting via online entertainment as though nothing had occurred since he resided there virtually. His life and his home was all main minutes from where the remaining parts were found. That was two additional solid bits of proof that sharp fingers to him as the executioner. A look into his experience unveiled that Roland was a faithful churchgoer who had gone to South Carolina State College in 2017, in spite of the fact that there are no records of his having graduated, and it's not satisfactory how he was doing work at the time. Roland had one past crime capture from October 2018 for getting a mark or property under misrepresentations. There was likewise a lady who was carjacked by two men, one of them being Roland, who attacked her and constrained her to head to an ATM where they took her cash. Then they constrained her to commute home, where they denied her of significantly a greater amount of her effects, including a PlayStation 4. Roland was never sentenced for looting the lady anyway. He sold a portion of the lady's taken possessions, including the PlayStation 4, when criminal investigators got a court order for his better half's condo named Maria Howard in New Zion, where he resided. They brushed the garbage cans behind the loft, and they tracked down a sock and bandana supposedly having a place with Roland that were vigorously stained with Samantha's blood. The analysts likewise found a white sheet with blood on it, a roll of channel tape dye wipes with blood on them, and a two-bladed blade that appeared to have blood on it. Tests would later affirm that the blood found on the two-bladed blade, as well as blood found on the sheets, blood found in the vehicle, and blood found on Blanche wipes, was a counterpart for Samantha Josephson. With the proof against him mounting quickly, Roland was at first accused of having a weapon during a savage wrongdoing, the seizing and murder of Samantha Josephson. The preliminary would be difficult for the family, with Nathaniel Roland arguing not blameworthy, guaranteeing he was honest even with the pile of proof against him. When the preliminary started in the mid-year of 2021, Roland's safeguard group contended that their client was a guiltless man, dependent to a great extent upon the way that his DNA had not been found on his supposed casualty. Then again, examiners countered the respondents' cases of blamelessness with the evident measure of proof that was gathered in the case. In the midst of the evidence they set forward was the CCTV film showing his vehicle getting Samantha in 5 focuses and heading out the quarts of her blood that were found in his vehicle, her horrendous impression on the vehicle's back window, charges that he attempted to utilize her bank card at an ATM in the wake of discarding her body, phone trackers that put their gadgets in the very place at the hour of the homicide, and the way that he resided close where her remaining parts were found. A penmanship master was likewise gotten to look at Roland's penmanship to a rundown that was composed on a piece of paper found in his home. On that rundown it was composed: duct tape her entire body, gloves generally dark, flip telephone, fuel, matches. The master affirmed all things considered. Roland composed the rundown, which seemed as though it was completely arranged. The examiners called 31 observers to affirm, including somebody who saw Roland cleaning that weapon, the pawn retailer to whom he attempted to sell her Samantha's wireless, and his ex who guaranteed her little girl had blood on her shoe later. Being in Roland's vehicle after the homicide, Roland called no observers and none of his family affirmed for him. Still he kept up with his honesty and begged the appointed authority. It took the jury just an hour to convey a blameworthy decision, and Nathaniel Roland was condemned to life in jail without the chance of parole. Directly following Samantha's homicide, her folks Seymour and Marcy Josephson volunteered to make sure that no other person faced a similar outcome as their darling girl. For accomplishing this objective, they begun the What's My Name establishment, which supports individuals of any age who contact ride-share organizations to request that the driver recognize them by name prior to walking inside a more bizarre vehicle. The Josephson likewise urged ride-share clients to be aware of a security convention they call SAMI, which represents Stop, Ask, Match and Educate, in the repercussions regarding Samantha's homicide. The freed share industry likewise did whatever it may take to safeguard drivers and travelers. Like one of the protections set up was the issuance of a customized 4-digit code that essayists could use to affirm through the application that they were getting into the right vehicle. Samantha's less than ideal passing sent shock waves through the hearts of her loved ones. The aggravation they bear is boundless, a demonstration of the brilliant light that Samantha was in their lives. Samantha Lee Josephson's story is an obvious update that misfortune can strike suddenly. May her memory move us to be cautious, post for each other, and work on the whole toward making a reality where security and sympathy